All right, you're filming.
Good evening. Welcome to this month's Educational Programs and Services Committee. I'm Ellen McCord, the chair. I'm saying that because there's a new face here that I don't know and I'm excited to meet. So I'm going to go around and have everybody just introduce themselves because maybe you haven't met everyone yet and we haven't met you. So I think you know Andrea. Yes, I think you know
Carol.
Sarah. Amy.
Christine Campbell, Community Supervisor Specialist.
Christine, it's nice to meet you. Thank you.
I'm JP.
I'm Melanie.
I'm Emily.
I'm Trina Schachman.
Chris, the other Chris.
I'm Allison Stevens. Nice to meet you.
Jim Roth.
Jeff Freeze. Art Vigilante Principal at the 4-5 Center. Nice to meet you.
And then we've got a couple other board members in the audience. Board member in the audience, number 1.
May West.
Come on over to my place.
Leah. And I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, but welcome to our meeting as
Hi,
well.
my name is Paige.
Oh, great. Thanks. Okay, so having said that and gone through the introductions, I will take a motion for approval of the October 17th motion.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. And now, without further ado, so excited, these are my favorite meetings of the year. We are going to start and work our way backwards, I guess. We'll start with middle school tonight and then move down to elementary after that. So take it away. Thank you.
All right, so this evening, we're going to be sharing some of our beginning of year data with you. That data includes our PSSA scores. That's the biggest component from last year, sharing with you where we're at. And I guess, I think we all understand that this data is only one component of all of the data that we look at, all of the things that we do on a daily basis with our kids. I mean, we deal with not only our mental health issues, the cell, all of those things are behind the scenes wrapped up in this data that we don't really, think about sometimes when we get wrapped up in the data. But I shared two slides up here with two pictures up here with you, and these are some of my favorite things that have happened at the middle school. One of them was this year where students in Mrs. Rambo's class did an escape room. And the other was from last year when our students in Mr. Staniak's 6th grade science class competed in a Shark Tank, and you can see Mr. Frigo down there, like really small, like shirt. But anyway, this is something where students are really getting hands-on learning, they're getting experiences, they're not sitting and filling in a PSSA test. And so this, if you ask me what really matters, this is what matters, that they're engaged and they're learning the content and they're applying those skills to things that they might deal with in the real world. So I just wanted to highlight that. All right, so starting off with our state achievement data, you'll see that we did not meet targets, the improvement targets in ELA and math. Those are the red dots that you see. However, we did exceed performance standards for growth in both ELA and math. And then our on-track measures for attendance, we exceeded performance standard there. And for college and career measures, we exceeded the performance standard there. So breaking that down a little bit further to actually look at what our numbers look like compared to the state, you'll see that in ELA, we were 60% proficient or advanced. The statewide average was 53.9%, so we definitely performed ahead of what the statewide average was. Also in mathematics, we were slightly ahead of the statewide average, 43.8 and 40.2. And then in science and biology, we were actually below the statewide average. And that needs to be explained a bit because last year our teacher, well, the year prior, 2 years ago, our teachers rewrote the science curriculum to have it aligned to the Steele standards. The PSSA tests did not yet change to assess students based upon those Steele standards. So we're kind of ahead of the curve, but it looks like we're really far behind the curve in science. And so this year will be the first year that they are going to be doing some field testing on Steele's types of questions on the PSSA. So it'll be interesting to see how we perform on that. However, I don't think they're reporting scores next year for science, right?
So they are reporting scores, however, we're not accountable
Okay,
for
that's what it was.
achievement on the science exam next year in 8th grade. We will be accountable for participation. Of course, that's a measure that they hold us to, but not towards achievement. Either way, we'll still see progress of how our students scored, even though it won't be held against us.
I have a question for somebody who can do some quick math, or maybe you even have it on the next slide or something, but between 57.8% and 59.2, do you have any idea what number of students that represents for us? Like, is that 3 students scored below, or, you know,
Yeah.
478, like, okay, just curious.
And then in the growth, this is what we look like in growth. So here, breaking it out, our academic growth score was 80% in ELA. Again, statewide average 75, and then mathematics 97% academic growth, which is much higher than the statewide average growth. And then in science and biology, we're just slightly ahead of the statewide average. So we met the standard there where we exceeded in ELA and math.
What's going on in math?
Yeah.
That's giving you such good.
I'm going to break that down a little
Oh,
bit
great.
further as I go through here.
We're
We'll
smart
see
for
that.
it.
Well, that's growth, not achievement, though.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So this is attendance. 96.9% of our students are not chronically absent. That's a good thing. So we have a very few number of students that we miss out on a daily basis, which is a good thing. Some of them are repeat offenders that we continually try to work on, but and then we also exceeded the performance standard with our career standards. That is the Act 339, and Melanie said it on that meeting today to get some updates, but I really have to hand it to our school counselors because they do an excellent job with tracking all the Act 339 requirements and making sure that our students have those experiences, so they get all the credit for that one.
You're doing a great job with that.
Yeah. All right, so here we have ELA achievement and growth. This is basically what you see every year that the state puts out and reports. So it is the same grade, but these are different students from year to year. So this is not comparing a 5th grader to who's now a 6th grader. This is comparing every 6th grade class that has gone through in the past couple of years since 2018. So I look at this chart and I always feel like I'm comparing apples and oranges because I can't really see how students are performing on a continual basis. But this is how the state reports our data. And you'll see that we had a drop off here in ELA, but again, this is different students. So if you don't mind, I don't focus on this one a lot. I want to see how kids are performing from year to year versus one class to another class, if that makes sense.
Chris, can I just intervene for a second? I did that math quickly for you, Trina. We missed that cutoff score by 8 students.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, so here we're looking at the same students in consecutive grades. So you'll see that from 5th grade to 6th grade, there was about a 4% drop in the cohort. And let me explain what cohort and non-cohort means. So cohort means that these students took all of the PSSA exams as they were offered. Non-cohort means that they might have taken one in 3rd grade, but they didn't take it in 4th grade. Maybe they took it in 5th grade, they didn't take it in 6th grade. And so.
Could it be because they were moving in and out of the district as well?
Moving in and out, or they opted out one year and not another year.
Got it.
Yeah. So on this chart, we primarily pay attention to cohort. So these are kids who have taken the PSSA each year. And so we dipped a little bit, 4% from 5th to 6th grade. We went up a little bit in 6th to 7th grade, and up a little bit in 7th to 8th grade, and overall, we stayed the same from last year, well, the prior year, 23 to 24, was the same. So something to think about, just on your radar, is that the students who were in 6th grade last year were in 1st grade during COVID?
Second grade.
2nd grade, okay. And then this year's class was in 2nd grade. So those are really foundational years when you think about ELA. I mean, that's all your reading, you know, learning to read, your sight words and those things. So we have definitely identified areas of weakness with these two groups of students. And we're definitely trying to address some of those areas and hopefully close some of those gaps for them. Something that we focused on last year as a goal for ELA was having students respond to a text-dependent analysis. This is the category on the PSSAs that is weighted the most. It has the largest percentage contributing to our overall achievement. It's writing. It's responding to a prompt and how you're able to respond to that prompt, citing textual evidence, unpacking the prompt. We used graphic organizers with kids to try to help them organize their writing and how they would respond to that. So what you can see in this chart is 6th and 7th grade had a little bit of movement in the green. We moved up 14, 17% of students, but 7th to 8th moved up 40%. So 40% of kids moved up in a category towards proficient on their TDA score. And we broke it down a little bit more because what we really wanted to try to do was have students score more points on their TDA, and we would break out for them, showing them what they needed to include in their response in order to gain more points to increase their overall achievement score. So if you look in 2023, 0 to 4 points, we had 156 students who scored in that range. In 2024, last year, we decreased that to 101. 8 points was 291. We had more kids score 8 points, 314. And the 12 point, we went up about 25 kids, 20 kids. And then 16 to 19 in that 16 point range. So overall, we grew. Now this is just our internal data that we kind of looked at, but we grew 10% there. So you can definitely see where we moved kids, and we're continuing to work on that again this year. Writing is just something that we do not see them coming to the middle school having like the greatest skills in, and it's a really important skill. So even though I feel as though we're kind of teaching to the test by focusing on this category, it's still a really important skill in life, and every aspect of any career that they would choose. So we really want to continue to work on this. And I think, this year the teachers will have 1 year under their belt as to what they did. They're tweaking things to, do things a little bit better. So we're going to continue to work on this, and hopefully we'll see some more jumps in this in 2025. All right, moving on to math. This is same grade, different students. So again, this is apples to oranges, but this is what you will see that the state will report, what we were 1 year to what we are this year. So you can see, again, you see a drop in that grade 6, about 9%. But remember, these are not the same kids. So you're comparing classes, not same student, okay? So, but overall, what you want to look at is last year, our overall score was 45%, this year was 43%. So we did drop off slightly in math. So Emily, to kind of highlight what you were talking about, our growth was really good, but our achievement was
Okay.
dropped off a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so here we're talking about same students, consecutive grades. So these are the same students from grades 5 to 6. Again, we focus here on the cohort columns. And you see a pretty significant drop there in 5th grade to 6th grade. That's like a 9% drop. In 6th to 7th grade, just 2%. And then 7th to 8th grade went up a little bit, 2%. Overall, 40. This one shows 48 to 45, but this one's skewed a little bit because you're factoring in the cohort and non-cohort. So that's why it's off a little bit from what the state reports. So let me break this down a little bit more to look at some things that might have happened. So these are all of the anchor areas that students are tested in maths. They're not tested in all of them in each grade level. So that's why you'll see there's some data that isn't available from our Linkit report. But looking at geometry in 6th and 7th grade, 19 and 24%. That's pretty significant. So in looking at what happened there and talking with teachers, I think you all know that we adopted the CPM curriculum last year, and that's a spiraled curriculum. And what we found was that geometry really wasn't hit hard for our students prior to the PSSAs. So that's something we're trying to focus on this year now, to kind of balance that CPM curriculum as a resource, but making sure that all of our students get all of the standards before we take that PSSA test. And when you look at Proven stats, we know that in 7th and 8th grade, that was focused on more heavily through the CPM curriculum, so you saw some significant growth areas there. So again, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are balancing that CPM resource with what the assessment anchors are, making sure that we're covering all the standards prior to our students taking that test. So we've definitely made some adjustments there, heavily in 6th grade, because we found that our 6th grade students really struggled with that curriculum last year. And we want to make sure that we're giving them what they need to be successful.
Just need a second on this slide to understand the orientation a little bit better. You're saying that what does the 24% represent in 7th grade? That
they went down from 23 to 24 in that assessment anchor.
Oh, they didn't go down by 24%.
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
They went down.
The mobility, like the same kids from one year to, the previous year to last year, dropped in that category 24%.
Dropped 24%. So that's not a score, that's a drop.
Right,
Correct.
right. That's not an overall, that's not an achievement
Yes,
score.
right.
It's
Okay,
a
so that
drop
is a 24% drop. Yeah. I
in
mean,
that assessment anchor. Yeah.
as a parent of a 7th grader last year, I will tell you she struggled in math because of that new curriculum. It was difficult.
Was CPM again?
College preparatory math.
And it was rolled out, and the teachers were sounding the alarm pretty early on.
And we're
In
still doing
implementation.
this? We're doing
Well,
it now?
So,
Sorry, did I open a can
no,
of
no,
worms?
it's a good
No,
catch.
I-
I mean, so we talk often about the implementation dip
Yeah.
with new programs.
Yeah.
I think this one was more like a plummet, just in format. And so Chris worked with her teams, but, 6th grade, most certainly, they noticed that there were some significant issues with the program overall. And so Chris is leading them through
really trying to provide that direct instruction, address the gaps, look at the standards that kids are to be exposed to and taught, and make sure that those are actually happening to individual levels of independence, not necessarily always groups, and those types of things, and, you know, addressing misconceptions as they emerge. So there's a lot of work that Chris's team and her teachers in mathematics are doing to make those adjustments. So yes, it is our resource, but no, we are not following it, you know, page by page.
Just to be clear, is this a philosophy, or is this a packaged curriculum from a company? I'm not.
Yeah, it's a package curriculum from a
Okay.
company.
Yeah.
And so last year, we pretty much followed it to a T,
Okay,
but struggled a ton.
okay.
And so this year, I will tell you that when I saw that we only dropped to 3%, I was like, oh. Because we really thought our math scores were gonna go in the tank. And I'll show you, if I just jump ahead to slides. These are our ELA math and science scores over time. So I did the year before COVID, up until now. And in 22-23, 45% was our highest that we had achievement-wise for math.
How about that?
Right. So we were like, oh my God, we're gonna go back to like, so looking that we only went, you know, dipped down a little bit, we still reflected on what happened there, and I will tell you that making those changes with that curriculum and looking to do things differently, the teachers feel much better. They were beside themselves last year, struggling with delivering that curriculum and not feeling like they were giving their students what they needed. So, I mean, when you have a teacher come to you and say, like, we're going to do this year, we are going to get those scores back up, like, you don't get that often. I'm like, all right. So they feel much better about the way that they are delivering instruction this year and what they are doing for students. So that's just kind of.
This is a good slide, I like it a lot.
Huh?
Yeah.
I like this slide, the comparison
Yeah.
across all the.
Yeah, because you look at our score and you think it's not really that great, but then you look where we were at 38% prior to COVID. And with COVID in there, we're still continuing to achieve at levels that are close to or not, close to the best or close to it, despite some of the learning gaps that some of our students still have from COVID. So people think COVID's over, but right now, those kids are in 6th and 7th grade, so I keep telling high school, like, you didn't get them yet, and I keep warning my 8th grade teachers, I'm like, you didn't get them yet, you know, they're coming to you. So I just think we still have to be very conscientious of that and know that we need to make sure we're doing what we can for those kids. So, all right, any other questions on math? Okay. So science, this just, you know, shows you that dip. The thing about science is it's the same grade, but it's always a different group of students, and you can't compare it from year to year. The last time the students took this was in 5th grade, and now they're taking it again in 8th grade. So it's difficult to kind of track that same student, same different grades. So that's what that one looks like. But I do believe that, you know, once we have our students being assessed under the SEAL standards on the PSSAs, I feel that our scores will definitely go back up. This was just a comparison from 23 to 24. We dipped down in nature a little bit, dipped down in bio a little bit, went up in physics, went up in earth and space. And this typically fluctuates depending on the group of students, honestly. There's not really much to dissect here.
More like what they like, not so
Yeah,
much.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's hard because it's not a year-to-year progressive thing. So. there's
A
always-
lot of it's read these too.
Yeah, it's just, it's
It's not
just a
really.
different one. It's
Concept.
gonna be interesting to see what they do with the STEEL standards though, because the STEEL standards are all project-based aligned. You know, it's all project-based learning. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how they design that test to assess that type of curriculum. All right. So our goals for this year, like I said before, we're continuing our work with TDAs and the writing, hoping to increase our scores there by 3%, really helping kids focus on how they can earn that 12 and 16 points on those questions. So what our teachers do is they do a cold write at the beginning of the school year. That means they just give the students a prompt, let them answer that and kind of get that as a baseline for seeing where the students are actually at in each grade level. And then they do 2 more cold writes prior to them taking the PSSA so that they can kind of help them build their skills over time. And then I talk here in our second goal, we're using CPM as a resource, not solely the curriculum. So that's the huge shift. So 6th grade is really just using it very simply as a resource. 7th grade is more of a 50-50 split, because what happened with CPM in 6th grade was that curriculum was so jam-packed, there was no wiggle room if you follow it step by step. And so, and what we also found was students were covering standards before they actually took the PSSA. That's like a #1 like role. You're like setting yourself up for failure if you're not covering all the standards before students take the PSSA exam. So 6th grades really made the biggest adjustments relative to CPM. 8th grade CPM is very different in that there's lots of wiggle room in that curriculum, and those teachers have been doing it for several years now. They feel really comfortable with it. They're doing algebra with it, a lot of hands-on types of things. I don't know if she's experiencing that this year. Is she feeling more success in math this year?
Yes.
Okay. So it's definitely more project-based learning, kind of hands-on that they're doing there with the foundational skills. So we're hoping to increase, we'll see if we can get our scores up to 46% this year. Some new things that we're doing this year, thank you for giving us IXL as a remediation and enrichment tool, because the teachers and kids have really pretty much bought into that, hook, line, and sinker. The teachers are loving it. It really gives them data on a daily, weekly basis so they can see where kids are at and the skills that they're struggling with. And I'll show you what that looks like a little bit. So this is kind of what we laid out for teachers in the beginning of the school year. This is the expectation. So we wanted to make sure that teachers understood that on a Monday, they spend 10 minutes in the diagnostic arena. So what this does is each Monday, it kind of repopulates where they're at in their skill levels, and it adjusts their the action plan. I was trying to remember, the one's the teacher directed, the other one is their action plan. So what it does is when they work on their action plan skills, those are assigned and generated by IXL. So they will be there. It's very individualized. So if I'm really weak in measurement, then that's probably going to be in my action plan until I demonstrate in the diagnostic arena that I have mastered that skill, that I'm proficient in that skill. So that's what's happening on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, the teachers have the ability to assign students in IXL skills that they're actually learning and teaching in their particular lessons that week. So they might be working on functions. So they can assign specific things that they want them to do in there on a Tuesday and Thursday. So that's related to what's happening in class right now. The action plans on Wednesday and Friday are targeting their areas of weakness. So there's some enrichment, there's some remediation, all in a week's time. Now, I will tell you that some teachers are experimenting with this a little bit, and we're going to look at that data and how it works for them and determine. So for some of them, they're doing the diagnostic on a Wednesday because sometimes we miss a lot of Mondays due to holidays and things. So they're going to see how that works out for them on a Wednesday versus a Monday. So they switch their days around a little bit. So they are really, really liking this. We're looking at second semester, trying to put some competitions in place for them as far as who showed the most growth, who answered the most questions, kind of things, just to generate and keep their interest in it. So that has been a very, very beneficial tool for us because now we have real data. Our MAP scores, as you know, are 3 times a year, where we get updates on what they're doing each week. So this is what I wanted to show you too. So you can see the total questions that they answered, how many skills they practiced, what they're proficient in, what they mastered, and you can see their average monthly growth. So 10 points equals 1 grade level.
One month.
1 month, I'm sorry. So you can see that they're all averaging around 3 months of growth. I printed this one. I cut and pasted this a little while ago, so it's a little behind of probably where they are now. But so it's really nice, to get this data and see how they're doing. And we should actually see the proficient skills go up and see, the pinpointed levels and diagnostics kind of start to shrink a little bit over time.
With that average monthly growth, every 10 points is
A month.
Month of growth.
a month of getting ahead or being where you should be. Like if you start this
Growing.
beginning of September and then you're at the end of September, you have 10 points.
So it depends on where you start, right? So if you look at the diagnostic levels, a 553 is 5th grade, 5th month. So, so somebody who's gaining 30 points went from 5th grade, 5th month to 5th grade, 8th month. Okay, so they're gaining points, so it's getting them towards where they're supposed to be. It's really a very individualized score, and ideally we would see students, earning 100 points a year, gaining 100 points a year to be able to close that gap. But you can see, like in our 6th graders, they're starting at a 5th grade level.
Right.
So this is really helping us to close the gap, which is why something like this is so helpful. Because they can work at a pace that is reflective of what they need with the skills that they need, and they can experience growth that way. So we're able to close those gaps just a little bit more effectively.
They work on it about 15 minutes each day, is about what it equates to.
I know, I got 2 kids doing it.
So I was gonna ask, is this every teacher? Because you said it's for
ELA and
remediation.
math. It's ELA and math.
But for the whole class, not remediation, not targeted remediation.
No,
The whole class.
no. Now, in per period, they can do more targeted remediation. That's where they can really have them work more than 15 minutes on their action plan skills. So that can happen. That's definitely an area where, because we have a lot of, we call them directed studies, where kids are in for math or ELA, and so they are utilizing this. So if they see that a student isn't making progress on the teacher-assigned skill that they're working on that week in class, and then they have them in per period, they can hone in on that to make sure they're getting that concept as they're covering it in class. And if they're okay with what they're covering in class, then they can work more on their targeted action plan.
JP, how is your kiddo like doing this?
No comment.
My kid, whoops. My kid makes it, but I know it's good for her.
They just get frustrated when they have like a score of
It's
86
funny
or something
because,
like
like,
that, and then they get
yeah.
one question wrong.
It drops them back down.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
So what's interesting is IXL will has an 80% is proficiency. So you can't move on until you've gotten 80%. But my daughter's in 7th grade at the middle school too, so she constantly wants the 100, and so it spurs some natural competition.
Calm down.
And so I'm like, yeah, like you're good, Ben, you got it. And she doesn't want to hear that. So I think that's part of it too. And then she's like, well, I didn't get the 80, I have to go back and do it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Well, just because they don't like it doesn't mean it's not helpful. But I was just kind
Yeah.
of curious. So, I'm sorry I asked.
I think it depends on the day in my
What
house.
these
Gonna be
are.
honest.
Yeah,
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to like my times tables versus, you know, but now I know my times tables, so. you know,
12 times 12.
Right. Well, 24.
So we're definitely, using that piece of data heavily to track our students, to develop some tier 1 interventions. I talked about tier 2, if they need that more in the PERC periods. And so that definitely has been very beneficial for us. Also, this is the first year that we use Lincoln benchmarks in both math and science. That's providing us with data on specific standards. And so in science before, they had no type of benchmark data. So now with the STEEL standards, the benchmark is aligned to the STEEL standard, so they can actually get some good data on where their students are at with the concepts that they're going to be teaching. So they're really thrilled with that. They have found that to be very useful for them. And so we're enjoying using that new tool as well. So it's a continuous process of improvement and growth.
Oh, wait, I can't go back real quick.
Yep.
Maybe something to think about. Do you need both the Linkit and the map? Are they different?
Yeah, so MAP doesn't give us MAP doesn't give us specific data that drills it down to standards, where the Linkit benchmark will show us more what standards kids are able to perform and not perform. MAP is more of a general, Andrew, you're the expert on MAP, so you can talk about that. But our teachers have been asking for more detailed data, so they would understand more what the students actually need, what standards they were grasping and what they weren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
MAP
I just hate
kinda
to see
gives us an overall.
to over benchmark.
Yes, there is a lot. There definitely is a lot. But we didn't do MAP in math this year. We just did the Lincoln benchmark, except for special education students, they did MAP.
And we've been having the conversation about the purpose and role of assessments that kids are taking. And they do have their unique purpose, but if teachers aren't using them to design instruction, then it's really not time well spent. And so, we're trying to strike a fair balance, and, I think all the principals advocate for the more time teachers get to teach, the better kids are going to be. So what is the happy medium? So we've been having the dialogue, and I always say, I'm not going to say yes until you tell me what the alternative is. And as long as that alternative is vetted and reliable instructionally, then yeah. I mean,
And I
we
think
want
that's what we're
kids
looking
to
at.
have the best experience and get the best instruction.
With IXL can it be a replacement for something else? So I think we're trying to evaluate that this year, and at the end of the year, kind of talk about what did that give us, did it help us? Are we still in need of other things that maybe it didn't give us, or is it really a great tool that we can maximize? So, all right, I think that's it. I'll turn it over to Art. Any questions, other questions for me?
Thank you.
All right, hi
Only
everyone.
about 6 minutes over, so good job.
I know, as I was talking, I was like, my makeup's going long.
We were given 5 to 10 minutes. It's 38.
But who's counting?
So as I go through the data here for the 4-5 center, you're going to notice it's all related to PSSAs again. As Chris was just mentioning and stated before she started, it's one data point, it's one data set. Just the conversation everyone was just having a minute ago about the different benchmark assessments. They're not all in here. They're not. The MAP assessment, F&P, QSS, Acadience, DIBELS, they're not all in here. That's the data we're digging into when we're working at the building level in our PLCs, in-service days, data days, which really hones down to very specific skills. But for this evening, we're going through PSSAs. I'm going to look at achievement data quick with you. Then we're going to get into growth data. I'll share our building score that has been released and published from the state. And then I'll share with you the action steps that we're looking at taking for the coming year as we continuously look at improvement. In regards to raw state achievement data for PSSAs. We have on the left ELA, in the middle math, and on the right science. Fourth grade took the science assessments for PSSAs. You'll see in ELA and math, we both areas we met expectations for the state. We're also above where the statewide average is at. In ELA by about 8%, in math by about 14%, and then in science, I'm not even going to do the math right now, how many percent difference that is. It's a shame, you know, we're the highest that we've been in science this past school year, and now science is changing. It's going from 4th grade to 5th grade this year, it doesn't even count. Following year is then a mode or whatever they're referencing it, baseline. So it'll be a few years again before I can report on science, but I'm glad the last time I'm really reporting on science, it's our highest. So, you know, that's a positive. Yeah, so we're happy to see all green and blue. You'll see that also on our growth data as well. So those are definitely positives. And as we look at achievement data from year to year, that group of students coming through is never the same. So at the building level, we're constantly preaching growth and looking at growth and examining and evaluating the growth of our students. But it is nice to see as the students come through that there are still some positive rewards. And that's, as I look at Upper Perk, I always look at it as a system. It's not just 4th and 5th grade. It's, for me, my scores are representative of the efforts put in at 4 and 5 by the students and the staff, but also K to 3 at Marlboro and Hereford. You know, because we are a system. The students that come to me in 4th grade just spent 4 years in either Marlboro or Hereford, where, you know, that primary learning was occurring. So as I report on any sort of data, I always look at it that way. The overall school performance profile, state assessment measures are on the left, ELA up top, followed by the PBOS score. So we met expectations in ELA in terms of raw academic achievement, and then in growth we exceeded. In math we met expectations and we're still growing, and then in terms of growth we exceeded expectations. That's outlined a little further on in one of the slides. In the middle, it's straight attendance. That's what it is from year to year. It is attendance. Our attendance score is up from the prior year, but that's strictly what it was. The attendance is based on not 23-24, it's 22-23. For whatever reason, state can't get it together the year that it's supposed to, so it's always a year behind. It was nice to see a little bit of a rise there, because the prior year that we reported, which would have been at the data presentation last year, was the year of quarantine. And that's what we were presenting up there. So when we saw it, you know, it took me a while to remember, why is it like that? Why does it look like that? So the last college and career measures, by the end of 5th grade, there's a certain number of artifacts that all children in the area of college and career readiness have to submit to the state. Our counselors, our exploratory teachers do an excellent job making sure that those students our students have exposure to them, and they're completed by the end of the year. And that's why that is also blue as well. So again, a lot of green and blues, which is you want to see. However, at the same time, we always want to, you know, have a goal of all blue up there, but, you know, certainly a positive result. As I look at this next slide, it is ELA longitudinal data by grade level. Up top is 5th grade, down bottom's 4th grade. The first 4 columns are the 4-5 center. 2020 is the year where, you know, nobody took the assessment. And then, you know, I'm trying to get a better picture of 4-5 center, not Marlboro and Hereford. So really this hones in as us as an entity, not trying 2 different buildings coming together and sharing what data look like from the 2 different buildings. This is ELA specific, highlighted in yellow. 2024 is the percent of students advanced or proficient in ELA. In 5th grade, it was 56%. That same cohort of children last year was 53%. So there is a slight growth in there. And then in 4th grade, blew the roof, you know, for us, 67%, which is the highest we've ever had as an entity, which is awesome. However, again, this is a system. You know, a lot of the efforts that students and staff last year put in 4th grade can also go back to K to 3 as well, and the efforts and the changes that for continuous improvement they're making there. On the right, the last 4 columns are the state. The very last one's empty because we don't have scores yet to report out, but you know, it's comparative. This is something that is shared with our staff just so that they can look at it from a long-range approach, especially as our entity develops. ELA Anchor Achievement, now this is year to year, 4 years from 2020 is the lightest, we'll call that purple, and then the deepest purple is 23, 24. This breaks it down by the anchors that are reported on in ELA. The first two obviously is the literature and informational text, those two types of text, and then it gets down into, you know, those standard domains that we're looking at. What we really were happy to see is last year our goal in both grade levels was focused on vocabulary acquisition and usage. In 4th grade, we were very focused on teaching explicitly how to utilize the text to infer meaning. So, you know, you're looking at words and as you're reading it in context, trying to make understanding of it for vocabulary. And in 5th grade, we did a lot of work with Greek and Latin roots in terms of utilize them basically in our spelling list as well as our word study list. So it was very nice to see the improvement in that. And we did that while holding strong in TDAs, ironically. So TDAs for the prior 2 years was our area of focus. So it was nice to see we didn't lose that, because you know, once you shift your focus, sometimes you forget what you were working on prior. So it was very nice to see that that strength was still there. This year, our focus is going to key ideas and details, main ideas, supporting details. As we look further into the PSSA's assessments in 4th and 5th grade, a large percentage is based on main ideas, basically supporting details. So for us not to overly emphasize that in every text we're reading is a disservice to be able to do these standardized assessments. Maybe it's grown in other areas, but you know, for us, it honed in on, you know, where we need to shift our focus. This next slide is the longitudinal approach for math. Again, starts in 2021, goes to 2024 for 4-5 center. You see that at the top. It then compares it to the state. You know, soon enough, you know, next year the 25 will be blank column and 24 we can report on. In 5th grade up here, 51% of our students were proficient in advanced. That same cohort last year, 46% more. So again, there was growth. And then in 4th grade, 57% of our students were proficient in advanced. Really strong, very different than the prior 3 years. Obviously, again, the highest score that we had in PSSA math assessment results in the last 4 years. So, but I always say there's peaks and valleys, right? Right now it's a peak. We're kind of heading upward in that trend, and we hope to continue to do so. But every group of children that come through come in with their own talent. So, we shall see.
Are you using CPM as well, or is that not a thing?
The elementary focus is K-5 EDM for math, everyday mathematics, and then in reading it's benchmark literacy, BML.
Do you know?
Now, what I'll go with that, what Chris experienced last year with the first year of implementation, you don't know the devil in the details until you've done it. So in that first year, you don't know where the pitfalls are. We've spent 8 years, I think, now in EDM.
Yeah.
We know where the pitfalls are. And we've spent constant amount of time.
So this is like a
PD.
sister curriculum, or like the elementary
I think
version
so,
of the
given
same?
the
You would think, but no.
No, they're very different.
Okay.
Mm-mm. But we've spent a lot of time modifying assessments to make them more rigorous, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We spent a lot of time looking at the scope and sequence and the order of how we're teaching things, and continuously looking at how we modify that. Our experience with us has helped us to make it a better program, because nothing you buy off the shelf is going to be foolproof. There's going to be issues and gaps in it. So, but you have to go through it to learn them. That is one of the advantages that we've had.
So do you know where these numbers compare pre-COVID? So like 24, yeah.
So you would have to go back to Splitton, Hereford, and Marlboro.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before COVID.
Yeah.
Our first year in existence as a building is when the buildings were shut down.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
I'll have some third grade data in our in my presentation in regards to PSSA prior to COVID. Only third grade though.
Yeah.
I was just curious if like, you know, obviously we had a, you know, dip post-COVID, if we were up where we were before, if we were actually exceeding where we were
Yeah.
before, that's all.
My chart actually, I have it that it goes back 9 years or 10 years before I was here. And then I just shrunk it to when I was here, like before COVID, just so you could see. I don't want to like put it all out there, but you know, like art, I mean, we had some of our highest scores since COVID, so.
Next slide breaks down the math into the anchor achievement by year. Again, it goes back from the state level, you know, to give you a point, only back to the 2021 school year. Now, this is same grade, different students as they move up. The area that we continue to emphasize is numbers and operations in base 10. That is the foundation of all math that students learn as they go on. You know, that's that, you were mentioning your times tables, you know, that's the computation practice. Those are things that EDM, for instance, is not rich in, that we've had to supplement in order to build up. And we've spent a lot of time doing that at the 4-5 Center, and it builds, because you go from numbers operations to base 10 to fractions to the algebraic thinking. You have to, it's progressional. So we have, you know, that's kind of where we continuously go back to. We've aligned our math interventionist primarily. That's what she's working on, is numbers and operations. When she's looking at map data to determine what students are going to be in her intervention groups, it's based on numbers and operations to base 10, because as you learn to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you know, your growth and ability to analyze and think when you're given a word problem increases. If you're not sitting there trying to remember what 6 times 6 is.
Right, count.
Yes, spend 5 minutes to come up with 36.
Good job.
Science PSSA, longitudinal data, first 4 columns again are the 4-5 Center since 2021, a steady increase in that. Science PSSAs, no offense to all of our scientists out there, it's heavy in reading, and it's also is heavy in measurement and data, and being able to interpret graphs and data and tables and charts, and a lot of reading. So as our reading scores increase, as we have spent more time evaluating how we're instructing science, it's really helped in this area. But a lot of it I still attribute to our growth in reading in general, and our children being able to decode words to be able to comprehend what's the question even asking. But again, very strong. As I said earlier, it's a shame it's the last gym reporting on because it's the highest. So I guess if you're going to go out, might as well go out on top of it, right? That breaks down your science anchor achievement by year from 20. Now this goes back. I don't know why it's out of order with the way the state does it, because if you notice on the bottom, it's kind of weird. But what was nice is that in all 4 domains, which we are hitting on a little bit of each, you know, it's not a very specific biology focus. It's not very specific to chemistry or earth and space science. It's a little bit of each that you're exposing children to throughout the 4th grade school year. So it's nice to see that that balance is there.
No, I don't know why yours is like that.
I don't know.
Mine wasn't.
This screen to me is always the most important when I talk to my staff. It's growth. Year to year. That 3rd grade group, when they were in 4th grade, what was the growth? That 4th grade group, as they moved to 5th grade, even though they were still with us, what was the growth? So, you know, we absolutely want green. You know, obviously we're going to be dismayed if it's red. But to look at the growth that our students made last year, I mean, 100% academic growth score in both ELA and math is just tremendous. And then a 98% growth score in science, I mean, it's off the charts. So, you know, I can't thank my staff and the efforts that they have put in and the focus that they have on continuous improvement and the efforts and energy that the students put in. You know, they have to take it somewhat seriously for you to get good results on PSSAs or any standardized test. I'm sure there are a lot of children out there who are C just to be done. So trying to motivate them to put in their best effort goes a long way. And, you know, you see the statewide averages right around about 74, 75, all three areas, and we're at 100. That is, you know, that's fantastic. A lot of that, for me, is rooted in the philosophy that we've implemented at the 4-5 Center, where we focus on individualizing instruction through small group learning. We have implemented and spent several years trying to do our best with guided reading and guided math models, both in reading and math. And to me, it has really helped pay dividends for our staff to truly understand what every child needs and how to respond to them.
The PVAS scores here, they're measuring not just the PSSA. Is it more than that? Their attendance, their behavior, is it that, or it's just the PSSA? Okay.
This breaks down to year. Chris had showed some of these slides and cohorts. This is ELAs. It's nice to see all the students that were with us in 3rd grade in ELA had some growth in going into 4th grade. Same thing from 4th to 5th, and then both cohorts together. These are the students that didn't necessarily take the test or transferred in, as well as here. It's interesting as I look at this for both ELA and math, then to go back and look at that. So I'm not quite sure how it weighs itself out. You know, and I sometimes struggle with which one should I be spending more time on. Certainly, that one looks prettier, to be honest. So we're going to stick with that one for our sake, but, you know, we still have to look at this, because when I show you this for math, ELA all across the board, for at least our cohorts, it's a positive increase. In math, the area that I was worried about is this grade 3 to grade 4, from 60 to 58. It's not a tremendous decrease. That's 4 or 5 students, to be honest. But still, it's 4 or 5 students. You'd rather see it going upwards than down. Now, from 4 to 5, it did go up slightly, 4%, as well as in the non-cohort. I mean, that's a pretty good jump there. Cohort altogether, 54 to 55, if you look at both grades. Still, not as impressive as looking at that slide.
I like to keep going back.
Go back to that one. Stay on that one, right? College and career readiness, this is, again, those artifacts that all students by the end of 5th grade need to submit to the state. Our counselor, you know, goes to the nth degree of making sure that they are done, as well as with support from our librarians and our flight teachers. Those are primarily the ones that are helping us to make sure the students complete those artifacts. And again, you want to see blue, so it's nice to see that. This is the attendance. Again, it goes back to 22-23. We're above the statewide average, but we didn't hit the performance standard that we want to hit, which is the 94%. So we still have some work to do in that area when it comes to attendance. Students should not be safe.
Yeah, stop it.
This, actually, this slide should be after. All the assessment results, maybe we'll get to it, led to a building score, which each of us has for our building, that I'll share in a bit. I thought I had that above, but I don't. So this is going to go into the goals and the action steps. The goals, when we look at it as a building, the very first goal is about a safe and supportive school environment, right? That's Maslow's hierarchy. If the kids don't feel safe and comfortable in your school, they're not going to want to learn. So we're always putting that first. It's paramount. And then there's a variety of things that we're doing through PBIS and SELs that support that. The second goal really goes into what we've kind of embraced at our building too, is fostering that collaborative learning community that's focused on making decisions rooted in data that allow us to address individual student needs through small group learning. It's a lot of what it's saying. As we go through these next couple of slides, it breaks down what first we're doing in math, 4 main action areas, and then 4 main action areas in ELA, okay? We'll start with math. The very first one is happening in both math and ELA. We've begun the journey towards a standards-based report card. In that process, though, we're evaluating unit assessments. We're raising the rigor in the assessments. We're making sure that they mirror the type of questioning that's going to be done on PSSAs. and updating both the assessment and the instruction so that students can be successful in it. So that's where that whole standards focus and increasing the rigor. You'll see that both in math and in ELA. This has been an ongoing process at the 4-5 Center for the last 3 years, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about knowing some of the devil in the details when it comes to the program and the resource. Having all 4th grade ELA teachers sitting together, pulling apart standards, looking at what's expected, looking at the assessments, making sure that they align with what's going to be expected of them on PSSAs in one building at one time, it helps, it goes a long way towards us being able to do that. So, that's really what it's focused on. The next area is something I mentioned already, is our focus on computation and math fluency. You're going to see this mirrored in ELA with reading fluency. It's obviously a different area, but it's those foundational skills children need to be able to do to be able to think at the higher level. If you can compute quickly, you can then analyze what a question's asking. Same thing in reading. If you're able to read the words fluently at a fast enough pace, it allows you to consume the text to be able to go back and infer, analyze, and dig deeper into it. Can't get there if you don't have that building block. So you'll see that both in math and in ELA. Third thing, Freckle software pathways. Math implemented Freckle, which is our learning management system, similar to what middle school has with IXL. Ours is Freckle. What's important to us is it's different than what they're using K to 3, and then for Chris, it's different than what they're going to use 6 to 8, because kids eventually get sick of the same learning software program. So if you're doing it K to 8, they are eventually tune themselves out. So having very similar programs that allow us to differentiate what pathway students are doing and they're individualized to students goes a long way. To one, it's new, it's different, it's interesting, so that burnout doesn't happen. Because if you're looking at the same program for 9 straight years, trust me, it's gonna happen. In math, it was implemented 2 years ago, so again, they're a little further along. Last year, when we looked at the Freckle and pathways that our students had, we aligned them to one of the 4 math domains based on MAP scores. This year, we redeveloped and replanned that all students have to get to grade level proficiency in numbers and operations to base 10, then numbers and operations in fractions, before we look at measurement data and geometry and algebraic thinking. So again, we're trying to make sure the foundation is really strong before you get to that more analytical thinking. The last area, again, there's a very strong mirror. You're going to see this is problem solving and open-ended responses. The ELA version of that is the work being done with TDAs. With problem-solving open-ended responses for our students in math is we have looked at before the mathematical practices, and there's, I think, 8 mathematical practices that are combined. Last year, we taught them 1 a month. This year, we front-loaded, taught them all so that we can revisit them 1 a month. So again, it's just kind of realigning the structure of how we're introducing skills so that students have them to build on. We also found that the lessons, for whatever the problem-solving type question they were being asked, was directly aligned to the content. So if we were working on fractions, it was a fractions question. Well, that's not really what you want in open-ended problem solving. You want them to figure out, do I need to add? Do I need to multiply? Do I need to subtract? Do I need to divide? What is it I really need to do? So that was another thing that we went back and did, is realign those practice activities for the students based on it. The next 4 are related to ELA. I hit on a lot of them already. Starts with standards, focus, increased rigor. Goes to reading fluency. Again, building that foundation. Explicitly teaching fluency skills so that as students are practicing and focused on fluency, those skills are being taught in a whole group manner. Every 2 weeks, there's a new skill being introduced or retaught, and it's explicit instruction versus implicit. It's not here, we're going to practice fluency. It's what am I practicing? I'm practicing pausing at periods. I'm practicing, emphasizing when I see an exclamation point, what's happening. So, a lot of that is connected, and it helps make them a better lifelong reader more than anything else.
The ELA scores were pretty high, right? So are these improvement strategies, are they different from last year or pretty much the same?
They are different from last year. However, at the same time, there's some parts of it that have built up. So for instance, in reading fluency, last year we utilized a program called 6-Minute Solution for reading fluency. What we learned is the passages were dry, so we needed to supplement them so it wasn't just 6-minute solutions on a continuous basis. In math, we were benchmarking just 3 times a year with the progress monitoring on Acadians for fluency. Now we're benchmarking basically every month and a half. Again, just to get a better grip on things. So a lot of it has been building with changes. So
Math was
it goes
kinda
back
your
to that.
math was your lower school. Science was high, ELA was high, math was.
Math was lower, but the comparison to state was much higher than ELA.
Still high, but out of yours.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a great question because it goes back to continually improving on what you're doing. It's not get rid of the bathwater with the baby. It's like how can we continue to make it more? Freckle software, again, that is new completely in ELA. We haven't used Freckle in the past. It does allow us versus what we previously used was called Lexia. Lexia was you set on a pathway and you couldn't really modify it. Freckle allows us to adapt pathways specific for students. So our students it also allows us to change what domains they're working in between informational text and fictional text, fiction and nonfiction essentially, so giving them exposure in those areas. And then lastly would be related to improvement strategies we're making with TDAs. We did not do a good enough job last year as staff analyzing TDA results on assessments and comparing with one another to make sure that how I judge it would be the same as Jeff, same as Jim, same as Allie, how I'm instructing the things I'm looking for, that we were more consistent with our measures. So that is something different again that we're going to be doing.
So you're getting staff together to like analyze TDAs from other classes?
To make sure those models, and then turning those models back to the students. This is what a 4 means, this is what a 1 means, this is what a 2 and a 3 means, and why they're different. Our achievement data, our growth data led to our building score. Our building score is the highest it's been, 86.6, which we're also really proud of. So.
Thanks, sir.
I'm going to hand out folders,
I'm going to do what they hate, and I'm going to hand you folders right now. They're all angry with me. I will say that Chris did challenge me to wear my zebra shirt jacket today. I chickened out. So, next year. Now, I don't have enough by count to go all the way around.
We can share.
No, you're fine. You guys, you're good. We'll make a last one.
We're giving it the same score. You know, I think it's really important.
All right. Do you guys mind if I stand?
No.
You gonna show me?
Forward is in fact,
All right, if I blow this up.
so.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, so first of all, thank you. Before we dive into the slides, though, I always love to just kind of give an overview of who we are, where we are, right? You have 5 schools, it's a lot. There's this first sheet right here, and we kind of referenced this a little bit earlier, which is, our students are so much more than PSSA data, especially at the 3rd grade level. It's the first time they're ever taking that PSSA exam, is in 3rd grade. So you're going to see us digging a little bit deeper into benchmark data, the data that Art was talking about. He's got the growth data. The growth is comparing, 3rd to 4th grade, 4th to 5th grade. We don't have that, right? We only have that 3rd grade data. So to only focus on PSSA would be doing a disservice to 2nd grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. I promise we won't painstakingly go through each grade level. But this kind of gives you a good idea, 17, 18, in terms of, our student attendance. Again, you might wonder why office manager referrals or OSS, out-of-school suspension, in-school suspension, are on here. Well, that's because if the kid's not in class, they're not learning, right? So you can see over the years where we've been, our overall attendance raw numbers as well as tardy. Our attendance rate is on the right-hand side there. Something that piqued my interest this year was the school mobility, which is on the right-hand side. We were 6.7% 2 years ago, 10.4% last year. This is a pretty significant change.
What is it?
It is currently 10%,
No,
10.4.
what is school mobility?
That means student coming in or student coming out during the school year.
Got it.
Okay? Yeah, it is. It is. I once worked in a school where it was 50% mobility. I led that school, as a matter of fact. So yeah, so it's nothing in comparison, but still, it's an uptick. The other piece that I wanted to point out is the economically disadvantaged. Two years ago, it was at 44%. We're at 47% now. It's about 1 out of every 2 students. And in comparison, back in 2015, we were at 29% at Hereford Elementary School.
Has the metric changed?
As far as I'm aware, no. All right. So the next couple of pages, just what makes us unique as a school. We are Title I. So that is, you see the folks on the right-hand side that are paid for in part or in full by Title I funds. That includes it gives us an additional reading specialist and an additional math specialist, both who focus mostly on providing intervention, small group and targeted intervention for students. You can read a little bit. I'm not going to go through what Title I is, and you can see how it's being implemented at our school and the why. The next page after that, very quickly, we also house the district's 2 autistic support classrooms. We have a K-1 and a 2 and 3. Again, you can read a little bit more about what that looks like. There's 8 students in total classrooms with a very heavy focus on making sure that we are including those students, not just at lunch and at recess. Many of our students, many of our autistic support students can functionally participate in core instruction and do on a daily basis. And it's something we're really proud of. All right. So then I have to, before I get into the data, I have to say thank you, right? So there's a few things. 2 years ago was giving us an additional kindergarten teacher. We now have 6 sections of each grade level at Hereford Elementary School, which puts us in line with the average of about 21 students per class. That's what it is K-5 in the Upper Perkiomen School District. So you gave us that additional kindergarten teacher. The additional 3rd grade teacher this past year, we have 5 kindergarten or 3rd grade teachers up until this year. So now we have classes of 27, 20, 28. We're now at district average. The next one, the last page is summer program. Especially when you're dealing with such a high, low socioeconomic status group, getting them out of their homes and in our building for a 3-week period during the summer is fantastic. We only have 3 weeks during the summertime where there's nobody in the building. The rest of the summer, we've been able to have students coming in for our 2 programs, our 2 summer programs. So again, that's thanks to our school board. And the last year we were able to bring on a math specialist, an additional math specialist through Title I, Beth Bianco. And you'll see some of the results, the data proves that out, adding her to that. So as we look at this, I'm a little, this right here, as you'll see in the data, this down arrow, to me, it's like a tenth or a couple of tenths of a percentage point. It's like one child. This is, we saw our reading data, our 3rd grade math, or I should say reading PSSA data, essentially stay the same. It did not move this past year. You'll see that our math data did grow. And we are on track for our attendance measures. Now, what you won't see is the growth measures that you saw on both Mrs. Siegfried and Mr. Vigilantes, because we don't have growth measures. So you can see how we stacked up against the rest of the state. 54% is where we were for ELA. The average in the state is at 53. Again, in math, we were at 50.8% this past year, and the state average is 40. As we move forward, Mr. Vigilante showed us this at the end of his slide, the building level score. This, of course, being our current, our building level score that was just released. The building level score calculation, I just want to point out, everything here on the left-hand side is in our building level calculation. But on the right-hand side, we don't get those. That's not included in our calculation. So when you look back, we used to have, in these years, we used to have 4th grade and 5th grade at Hereford and Marlboro Elementary School. So that having these added to the calculation obviously gave us that boost. You saw Mr. Vigilante's data with his slide that he kept going back to. That's that data, right? So I'd also like to point out, this right here is where I took my little Hereford hiatus. I was here, until the end of this year, and came back as we were coming out of the COVID year, we'll say. So this, again, going back to Mr. Vigilante, we don't have 2024 data for Pennsylvania yet for all, but you can see where we were 2024. This is where we were last year. This is where we are this year. Yeah, there's a couple of tenths of a percentage point difference between these two scores. But you can see where we came out of COVID, and here we are. You can also see, okay, and then the average at the state level. This puts it in a bit of a different perspective. Again, Mr. Prager, this gives us that 2016 data. I'm not actually at 2015, 2016, I'm sorry. You can see at Hereford, our reading, 3rd grade reading scores, we exceeded state average. And then somewhere along in this point right here, we began no longer, and this is pre-COVID, exceeding state average. So where we see ourselves now, digging out of COVID, is we have now met or exceeded state average. Is it okay just to be at state average? No. And can we do better? Absolutely. This is that anchor achievement slide that Mr. Vigilante was showing everyone as well. I'm going to move on because the next slide is a little bit more detailed. It gives a little bit better of a perspective of where we are in terms of our plans for this year. If you take a look, this is how the PSSA is broken out. These are the numbers. This is the points that you can possibly earn on the PSSA. So you see this area right here, key ideas and details. This right here, as we talk about what our focus is going to be, or is, or has been for this school year, obviously our focus needs to be here. It's our lowest area and it's the biggest area of testing. Make sense? As we move on. We'll come back to that as I talk about our plans for this year. For math, again, you see that longitudinal data from 21 all the way up to 24. We made about a 9% growth in math year over year, which we're very proud of. But again, we're at state average. We can and will do better. Here again, this is where we were back in 2015, exceeding state average. Again, once again, you see this drop in 2018, and then they began to tick back up, but then COVID hit, and so here we are again, looking to exceed state average. Any questions about that? Same slide for math, and then, so we have really two main focuses. You heard Mr. Vigilante talking about numbers and operations, and the need to focus on those basic skills. Here we are, again, 15, total possible points is 15 on that PSSA, and you see this is one of our biggest areas of struggle, and same thing with measurement and data. So you'll see not only are we going to be focusing on numbers and operations, but also measurement and data. Now, I do want to get a little bit deeper into the weeds because, again, we're doing a disservice to our kindergartners, first graders, and second graders if we're only talking about 3rd grade data. What is going into us getting to that 3rd grade PSSA assessment? So we'll talk about DIBELS, which is Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It is the series of subtests that we give to the students 3 times a year. that is, it's a benchmark and it's meant to tell us, it's meant to be predictive of their ability to read or their future success in reading. And of course, ELA MAP measures of academic progress. So what we see in the data, and we took a little bit of a different look at this. We looked at beginning of year data and compared it year over year, okay? So where our kids started at the beginning 2 years ago, 39% of our kids, by the way, are coming on or above level when they start kindergarten. So this year's cohort, 32% of them started on or above level. Okay? So you see that growth though. So from the beginning of the year, when they started with us 2 years ago, to where they started the year this year. Overall in our school, by the way, just so you have a frame of reference, our average composite score above and on or above last year at the end of the year was 70%. Okay? 70% of our students on or above. Okay? So again, beginning of the year, 49.3, we moved to 58.6, beginning of year. Remember, we expect summer slide to be happening. And we believe that that summer program is helping us mitigate some of that summer slide. So 56 to 69%, almost 70%.
Do you think full day carry
Beginning
all
of the
that
year,
out too?
without a doubt. I almost take it for granted now. I don't, right? I don't even think about it anymore. To be able to have those students, our 5 and 6 year olds in school for a full day, gives us the ability to really break down. Mr. Vigilante was talking about the small group instruction that's necessary to really target student need. In any classroom, yes, 40% of them may have, or 32% of them may have showed up on level in kindergarten this year, but you might actually have a reader in your kindergarten classroom.
Right.
You might have, you also might have a student in a kindergarten classroom who doesn't know the difference between a number and a letter. Right? Kindergarten teachers are amazing, by the way. All right. So, right. I'm sorry, I stayed right in front of you. So this DIBELS data, again, this is just a bit of a comparison. And what I'd like to see with, or point out with this is the longer students are with us, the more we're growing them. And we're growing them at a significant rate, right? So 26 points of growth, 9 points of growth, averaging 16 points of growth in a given year from fall to fall. As we move on, at or above benchmark, let's see here. Yeah, this is national percentile. So it's always also really good to say, how do we compare nationally, right? So again, where we start out, believe it or not, a little bit above average. So average would be 50 percentile. So we're moving kids, and it's just a different perspective of looking at it, right? And again, this is MAP. Now MAP gives us a RIT score. A RIT score is just their language for how a student grows, right? The MAP assessment is given in a way that's flexible. So if a student takes a question, gets it right, it gives them a harder question, right? If it doesn't, it kind of goes back. So it's responsive. And out comes this RIT score, which is a MAP concoction. But what you see here is, again, that growth. When they take it for the very first time on a computer in the fall in first grade, to moving to second grade this year. Beginning of the year, 18 points of growth. The state, the average is 15 points of growth. 17 points of growth on that RIT score. From second to third grade, again, the average is 15%. Okay. We can move on from this one. Oh, great, there's motion in it. Great, okay, so then we're going to go ahead and just skip ahead to math. Now, last year, for years, we've been doing DIBELS, dynamic indicators, right? Last year was the first year that we used Acadians. Acadians, in this sense, is the DIBELS equivalent in math. Breaks it down to small subtests, beginning quantity discrimination, next number fluency, that again are our focus in order to build students who are fluent mathematicians. So last year was our baseline year, and you can see where they started this year in comparison. So again, similar to DIBELS, we started out last year at the beginning of the year at 54.3, We moved this, beginning of the year this year, that same cohort is now at 73.5 in our first year of using these subtests. Next up, again, is comparing with national percentiles. This came out of a study from 2016. It's a little old, but it's the best we could find. So when they start out with us in kindergarten, they're at the 54th percentile, and they're moving on, I should say, they moved from 54, this isn't the percentile, this is the percentile. So the 70th percentile, 60th percentile, 55th percentile. So that's fall Acadians, fall to fall. And again, going to math, writ on that math, you see our growth from 16%, 9%. You see that growth there in third grade, again, a bit of an area of concern as compared especially to the state level where you see that right there. So what do we do with those assessments? Well, we don't just take the DIBELS assessment and just say, great, did we grow or not? We go further. We're going to talk about our goals first, and then we're going to talk about our plan next. So the goals in DIBELS, again, when I returned to Hereford in 2021, we were averaging in the 50s for our end of year school-wide on or above level, in the 50s. We are now at we were at the 70% mark last year. At the end of the year, we think we can push it beyond 75, but we're getting closer to the 80% that we need to be at, right? PSSA, again, key ideas and details. As we saw from the previous slide, we would like to move from 47 to 57. We're going to show you some of the things that we're doing in order to focus on that. And you can see that this has been a consistent issue across the board over the years. Math goals, similarly, we believe we can move from 62 to 72 conservatively. And on the PSSA, again, our focus on operations and algebraic thinking, 54 to 64, and you can see once again, we are just very consistent in this area. We can do better. So what's our plan? What are we doing about all of this information? Tier 1 action step right here is guided by a template that aligns standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Teachers will develop differentiated lesson plans in reading and math. So what does that actually mean? We have a PLC each week with the teachers. Our academic leadership team, which consists of me, our reading specialists, math specialists, and our instructional coach, we go to each of those meetings, and what we walk in with is the assessment data for the upcoming unit assessment from last year. So we're able to go into Linkit, pull the assessment data from last year, and we're able to see where our students on that upcoming assessment were strong, what standards they were strong in, and what standards they were deficient in. And that becomes our focus. That standard that they were deficient in becomes our PLC focus that day, where we focus on, okay, how are we differentiating our instruction in our hour-long daily math small group instruction or our hour-long daily reading instruction. So if it's a student that is exceeding the standard, how are we pushing them into the next grade level? If it's a student who's struggling and below level, then how are we going back into the standards and remediating that standard need for that student? Our instructional coach, her focus this year is to be going in and helping and supporting teachers during that differentiated time, that reading and math differentiated time. All right, the next one here is, so that's essentially that's the standards, but what about the benchmarks? What about DIBELS and Acadians? The next step is also during that differentiated time, our teachers are focusing on, again, students that are on level, we're developing plans for them. We're developing plans for students who are above level on DIBELS and Acadians and for below level as well. Targeted instruction. It's a quick 5 minutes at the start of their small group lesson each day where the teacher is focusing on those basic literacy skills or those basic mathematics skills with that group of students with the intent of pushing them and getting them on or above level. So the next step then here is instructional walkthroughs. So one of my focus is, just like our instructional coach who's non-administrative, My walks are focused on the small group instructional time in reading and math. So our teachers know that I'm coming in, and when I come in, I'm giving them feedback based on what they're doing for their first 5 minutes of their small group with the targeted benchmark instruction, and then the rest of that small group, their 15-minute standard-based focus. At Hereford also, something that we're very, very proud of is, we have a number of what we call the Solutions Network, which is small group committees of representative teachers across the board that sit in on each of these committees, like our SAP Council, our Safety Council, our PBIS Council, as well as Special Ed Roll Call and our Academic Leadership Team. So these are groups that meet to solve problems of practice. So when it comes to the academic leadership team, those are the ones who are coming in and helping us develop the professional development that's targeting our benchmark assessments and our standards assessment, our standard work as well.
Who's on your academic leadership team?
There is a representative from each grade level.
Like a chair?
Correct. Not in a middle school, high school sense, like it's not what they're called. They're not really a chairperson formally, but that is, yeah. There's one person, plus, of course, our reading specialist, math specialist, me, and our instructional coach. Exactly, yes. Okay. This right here is, again, it's a little more of a detailed version of what you saw up here. If you have any questions about this or anything else, I kind of just open the floor.
So the only question I have is, as you showed in the data in a couple slides before this, everything's kind of been consistent across the past couple of years with math and with ELA. So I guess with these strategies that you have right now, without going into the weeds and going into a great amount of detail, how are these different than the ones we've had before, or maybe we weren't getting the results we're looking
So
for?
coming back in 2021, there was a very heavy focus for us on those benchmark assessments because only half of our students were meeting those benchmark assessments. So there was more of a focus there, less of a focus on looking at the standards, looking at and actually drilling down. The school district has gone through a really intensive process, as you learned last time, with the standards-based report card, transitioning to the standards-based report card. And it's not just been about the standards-based report card. It's been about really rewriting a lot of the curriculum and assessment associated with it. So those the curriculum, the assessment, are aligned with PA Core standards. And this year, especially for us at Hereford, because we've seen our benchmark scores increase, that now allows us to spend more time with that much heavier focus in our PLCs and in our daily instruction, targeting students where they are in terms of the PA Core academic standards. So if it's a student who's struggling, and I'll just use a very basic, with addition and subtraction, right? Then we're going back to, okay, what's the standard before that? What is the skill set before that that's going to help this child? And we're targeting that in that small group instruction every day so that we're building them up. If a student is strong in that addition and subtraction, well, then we're looking up, further up on the PA Core crosswalk, and we're saying, okay, maybe they're ready for some concepts of multiplication and division. And let's push them there and target them there. It's a really good question. That's the biggest difference. Does that answer?
Yes, that helps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate, probably well beyond where we are, so you said that adding a couple extra staff members really helped. Do you anticipate needing to add more?
No.
I looked at your numbers, but you went
Yep.
down.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah, our numbers are commensurate with, at the time, last time I looked at that with every other grade level, every other school. Other question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but most certainly, not
Okay.
What'd you say?
I'm here to share some data about Marlboro Elementary School. These are our lovely students. On the first day of school, you can see behind them our football players. Where's the pointer? Right here. The high school football players came down and cheerleaders and welcomed our kids to school. So that was really cool. That was the first time that happened. So thanks. High school's not here, but thank you to them. So kids just really happy and proud to be here, which is, I think, just exciting in itself that I think most kids come to school feeling really happy to be at Marlboro, as well as our teachers. And I think that's what sets us apart, is that feeling in our school that kids and teachers are excited to be there. So we have green arrows for interim target here and here. What that means is we hit our interim target, but that means that we decreased our achievement performance on the third grade PSSA from the prior year. So that's what that green down arrow means. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment. So in the next one over is just our regular attendance, and Art alluded to it. During COVID, we had our last reported attendance year. It's always a year back. It's a year prior than what you would think it was. So this is actually not data from the same year. So the last reported attendance was our quarantine year, and it was very poor, and now we have seen significant improvement there. These are our on-track measures. So you can see here what our actual PSSA performance was. We were down a little bit in the ELA. We were down significantly more. We were at 77%, and we went down to 65%. So that was a pretty significant decline in our math performance, but still hit our interim target. So you can see here, right here, is our performance in our math anchor achievements. So you can see that that was an area of focus in measurement and data was our building goal last year, and will continue to be our building goal for this school year. Both Mr. Freeze and Mr. Vigilante alluded to that measurement and data is heavily weighted on the PSSA performance. It's heavily weighted 1 point below operations and algebraic thinking. So we focused on measurement and data last year, and we will continue to focus on this year as our building goal. This is our ELA anchor achievement, again, just in third grade. Last year we focused on key ideas and details. We will focus again this year on key ideas and details because it is the most heavily weighted assessment anchor on the PSSAs with 25 points possible. So in my notes here, it is, I think it's 13 points for literature and 12 for informational. Yep, so 13 points possible for literature and 12 points possible for informational. So we will continue to focus on key ideas and details.
Am I reading that? The dates are weird on the
Yeah.
bottom.
It looks like their dates are weird.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you say?
What
Yeah,
does
sure.
it mean?
So this should be year over year. So
What's
yep.
the light purple?
Yep, so the light purple should be, if I'm reading this correctly,
Yeah.
this should be this last year, right? 23, 24,
Okay.
22, 23, 21, 22.
Yes, it was.
So you can see, go ahead, two more
Do
questions.
you see on the bottom?
Yeah, I do see the key is wrong. It looks
Yeah.
like, I have to talk a little bit about that.
It's just labeled wrong.
Yeah, right, he is labeled.
Okay.
Yep, but you can see our COVID dip here as well. So we did have a COVID dip, and I think I shared this in my prior data presentation last year that we had a COVID dip, and you can see that here in all of our anchor areas as well as our overall PSSA performance. But we are back to where we were pre-COVID, so. Our regular attendance numbers, we spoke about that already. So this is our indicators for students meeting the performance standard for attendance. We are currently not hitting the performance standard for the statewide performance standard. So we're gonna have to take a deeper look at our attendance. I will tell you that I pull that monthly. So I pull numbers monthly, and we look at that as a building leadership team and make sure that 80% of our students are demonstrating 7 or less absences every year. So
I also know that in pulling that data, that our kindergarten and first grade students have poor immune systems and parents that like to keep them at home. So, or a combination of both. And so our attendance performance is much better in second and third grade as a general trend over the years, and that we need to work on getting our kindergarten and first grade students healthy and in school. And
Is
their
the
parents-
pneumonia-
their parents also parent.
Yeah, is the pneumonia trend more, right now, more middle school, or is it everywhere?
No,
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's
Did you-
real.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, the amount of kids I'm
I
hearing.
feel like
I had a
Hereford is the
teacher
one
out
I
for the
hear
last
most
week.
of.
I was out for a few days.
My daughter was out for almost a week.
I'm trying to look, I think the count I heard for last week at the end was 17.
Okay, yeah. Like, what the hell's going on? Everybody's getting pneumonia. It's
It
crazy.
is weird.
Hopefully, a week off. a
So
week
our
off brings us
building
in.
score goal, our building score, as already shared by both of the other elementary school principals, was an 8.5. Again, that's really a score that's based on achievement in third grade, primarily on achievement. And we don't have growth scores because there's only one tested grade at Marlboro and Hereford. So this is our, Jeff also spoke about DIBELS, our dynamic indicators of early literacy. This is our performance from last year. We had each of our grade levels almost at 80% of students, almost, third grade was at 78%, or 80%, at least 80% or higher, hitting that benchmark. And so that really tells us that our kids are reading, and we've really made that our focus at Marlboro Elementary, that we want to make sure that all students leaving third grade can read. And so this data tells us that for the most part, we are meeting that goal. 80% of our students are leaving being readers. And some of our students are coming into kindergarten, as Jeff said, reading as well. And so we need to continue to think about that. As we look ahead though to this school year, this is our beginning of the year DIBELS data in each of our grade levels. These two are blank because we haven't yet done our middle of the year and end of the year assessments. If I can just go back one slide, you'll see that kindergarten is leaving 92% on benchmark from last year. This year coming in, kindergarten is 35% at benchmark or above to start the school year. That was higher last year. So we know that our kindergarten group coming in to us is performing a little bit lower. I'm not concerned. We have a great kindergarten team that does a phenomenal job of teaching kids to read very quickly. I was in a kindergarten classroom a few weeks ago, and the teacher was tapping and blending out words with a group of kids, but then in the next second was meeting individually with a student who was needing work on sound. So she was practicing different sound work with the child. So our teachers are really, really good at the kindergarten level of differentiating according to skill need. But I will tell you that our kindergarten group coming in this school year is lower performing than our last school year. So we have more room to grow there. Our teachers know that. And then this is our beginning of the year scores in first grade, second grade, and third grade. So it's really promising to see strong scores coming from the beginning of the year in second and third grade, because this is after the summertime. They've come back. So I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to grow kids in this data point throughout this school year. Here's our school level MET data. I'm going to pull out my notes here because we did a lot of growth. We did a lot of work around this data in the beginning of the school year. The map this year, we decided to transition to, as a district, opted into some new MAP assessments that were more closely aligned to the PA core standards. So we saw some discrepancies in the data we were getting out of MAP from last year to this school year. What we do know, and what I can share with you, is that we dug in deep into that and use MAP a lot at Marlboro. So we looked at how many students, is this really determining our proficiency levels? Is this data point really determining our proficiency levels in third grade? And I will tell you that we have figured out how to make sure it is. And so we have spreadsheets that we use to compile that data. And I can tell you that if students are scoring in the 70th percentile on math, that they have an 87% chance of being proficient on the PSSAs. So when we look at that, we have a beginning of the year math spreadsheet. And we have all of our RIT scores in there for each of our kids. And kids needed to hit a 196 to be on track, basically to be proficient in the fall. We know that in the winter they need to be hitting a 203 to be proficient in the winter. So we're looking at that, and we've shared spreadsheets with our teachers to ensure that they know, what the kids' target is. And we have that same number as well for ELA for reading. So we have also done, and I don't think I described this well in my action steps, but we have also taken the MAP assessment and we've aligned it to what the standard is telling us, what we know is aligned to the standard, and we structure our small group instruction around that. So what kids are ready for, and then what kids can be enriched when we're talking about math and reading small group instruction. So this is our reading math data from the fall. Again, this is returning after summer break. And we know that if kids are in the 65th percentile, that they have greater than an 89% chance of being proficient on the PSSAs. That score in the fall is 193. We're looking at kids to be at 198. This is in second and third grade. So this is in third grade. So this is our whole school MAP level data, but in third grade, we're looking for very specific MAP scores. Are there any questions about that? Okay. So when we're talking about key findings from the data, one of the things that I wanted to really dig into was what are our interim 2033 goal targets, and what do we need to tease out in order to understand how to improve. And so I will tell you that we are concerned about our economically disadvantaged subgroup. They have not met our interim target for the past 2 years in reading. So we're looking at who exactly are those kids, why are they categorized as economically disadvantaged. I think now, thanks to Sharon and Sarah, it's now in Linkit, so we're actually pulling reports we can now pull reports out of Linkit based upon our economically disadvantaged subgroup and look at very specifically their performance by subgroup in MAP and PSSAs in DIBELS.
What is your percentage as compared to Hartford?
I have a lower percentage. I don't know my exact percentage,
Yeah, okay.
but I can give.
Lower than
that's-
47%.
Yes, it's not that high.
Yeah.
It's lower. It's significantly lower.
Yeah.
Jeff, Hereford and the 4-5 are title schools.
Right,
So
right.
he's above 40, and I think I'm right at 40.
Is that what you have to be? Is that the
No.
cutoff
To
for
go
you?
school-wide, we have to be 40%, but no, you don't have to be at 40. I forget exactly what the threshold is.
Okay.
I do have a sheet though, and I can tell you the number of kids that we have that are categorized as economically disadvantaged. I headed into this thinking it's that category is primarily free and reduced lunch, and it's not. It's foster, it is Medicaid eligible, so I had a lot of learnings around that. It was higher than I thought it would be once we looked into who the kids were.
And I just want to say as a total side note, if you think back to high school, that is also the subgroup, one of the other subgroups at the high school that historically struggles to perform. So we're seeing that trend all the way through.
Which means that we need to focus on it now, because I felt like my heart drop when I saw that, because I was like, we can't have kids who are categorized in that subgroup not being able to read for a plethora of reasons, right? It's just very concerning. So, and I know that our students with disabilities subgroup did not meet their interim goal target in math. So again, looking at specifically who are those kids, sharing that with teachers, and sharing really specific strategies to focus instruction and grow those kids, because we can't have students with IEPs not learning either. So that was really, we dug into that a lot in the beginning of the school year, and I will say we are continuing to dig into those subgroups even now. We saw in math, on the PSSA, we focused a lot last year on a specific anchor, represent and interpret data. We saw an increase of percent of points possible. So that 51% right there is not proficient. It is percent of points possible earned. So if you have 25 points possible, you know what I mean, we look at the percent of points possible that can be earned. We increase that by focusing on representing and interpreting data, which you know is measurement and data, and it's highly weighted from 51% to 73% points possible earned. So that is something that I wanted to highlight, as we spent a lot of time on that, and we did see a huge increase in that area. We do need to continue to focus on key ideas and details. So we focused a lot on main idea, identifying the main idea and central message of passages. We know it's heavily weighted, and we are pretty consistently earning about 55% of points possible in that anchor. And I can show you historically, the numbers are in here. We're looking for that to be closer to 65, because if we can't, that's too low, in my opinion, for such an important skill that carries them all the way through middle school and 4-5. So that's going to be our focus. Again, this year was our focus, last year it's our focus again. So you can see here, over the prior years, this has been where we've, our percent of points possible have been in key ideas and details, both in information and in literature over the past few years. So you can see it hasn't been great, and we really need it to be a lot higher than that. And then this is our goal, increased percent of points possible earned in measurement and data from 60% to 70%. We, again, know that it's a heavily weighted anchor area, and we're looking for that to improve from 60 to 70%. And again, traditionally has been low over the past few years. So these are some of our improvement strategies. At this point, I think I want to share that we continue to focus on root cause analysis. So when we have a student who we know has a decoding issue, and we know that from our DIBELS assessment, we do a significant amount of diagnostic assessment collection. And I can pull you up right now, talking with you, any student who has a decoding issue, I can pull you up their diagnostic scores, and then how they're being progress monitored and all of their progress monitoring data points. If a student has any sort of, is not core in all of those DIBELS areas, the DIBELS data point that I had shared with you earlier, I can share with you exactly what that child is working on in their instruction in the classroom. So teachers do a really good job of providing really targeted skill instruction to kids to make sure that they have the building blocks to read. We progress monitor kids weekly if there is a concern. We progress monitor them weekly. If they are not core in all of those DIBELS areas, the teachers do that. And they have goals that they have to hit each week. And so it's pretty evident pretty quickly if a kid is not hitting those goals. And so we get them quickly into other discussions about how we can improve. And then it's bi-weekly if they are in, it's weekly if they're in intervention, and it's bi-weekly if they are in classroom tier 2. Our instructional leadership team spends a lot of time diving into data along with me. We talk at length about standards and what standards instruction looks like. We talk about where standards are appearing in our curriculum, how they're being instructed in the classroom, and then how we're assessing them. And this kind of bridges the gap between our PLC protocol. So we look at when we have PLCs, which happen every week with all of our grade levels with our core team, we look at the standards that are coming up in each unit that they're about to teach. And then after the unit is done, and then we talk about strategies and how they're going to focus their instruction. And then we also pre-vote the upcoming assessment that they will be administering to. Also, after the assessment is taken, we then come back and say, did 80% of our kids hit the standard? And if they didn't, then what are we going to do in small group instruction to help make sure that they're going to? And that could be for a variety of reasons. The curriculum wasn't hitting it, the instruction wasn't hitting it, or the assessment wasn't hitting the mark. And so we really focus our conversations around those things. We talk about Swiss data, attendance data, and academic data as a building monthly through our building leadership team meetings. That is, again, similar to Mr. Freeze's setup, a chairperson from each grade level that participates with me in these discussions. And we talk about behavior, attendance, and academic, because those all come together in a child when we look at their learning. I think I'm going to continue to talk about and explore our 2033 targets and our subgroup performance
We're doing that right now. We're continuing to look at who those kids are and how we can help improve students with IEPs in math, and then making sure that our economically disadvantaged students are meeting the target as well in reading.
Can you tell me what triggers progress monitoring?
Sure. So if we have a student, every student who is not core in DIBELS, I'll show you. Boop, boop, boop. So is not core in all areas in DIBELS. So DIBELS is not one data point. It is multiple data points. There's phoneme seg, letter naming, nonsense word fluency, all different subtests. If they're not hitting all of them, then we progress monitor their lowest subtest, if that makes sense. So if we have a third grader, the lowest subtest in third grade is nonsense word fluency. If they are core, if they are not core in nonsense word, we progress monitor them in nonsense word fluency. And that happens every other week.
Okay.
If say they're core in nonsense words, then we look at word reading fluency. If they are not hitting that mark, then we progress monitor them in word reading
So
fluency.
every 2 weeks?
After instruction.
Okay.
Yep.
Specific
Yep.
instruction.
And that looks like the classroom teacher
Yes.
addressing the student
Yes.
and
Yep.
assessing every 2 weeks.
Yep. And we also, so we do, that's not the only assessment that we do. We also dig into, if it's word reading, we look at, have the students mastered the kindergarten trick words? Have they mastered the level 1 trick words? If I'm talking about third grade, have they mastered the level 2 trick words? And then have they mastered all the third grade ones that have been taught so far? And if they haven't, we go back and we teach them the kindergarten ones, the first grade ones, the second grade ones, and then the third grade ones. So when I say root cause, we are in it in root cause, and we go all the way back to what they might even be missing from kindergarten or first grade or second grade.
Okay. Is there a parent communication component?
Yeah, so in child study there is. So when we have a student that's not making progress on their progress monitoring protocols, then yes, then we're looking at them for child study, which does include that parent component where we're talking to the parent about what our concerns are and bringing parents in for meetings and things like that.
And if they're in an intervention with one of our specialists,
Right.
the parent is well informed.
Yes.
and knows that.
They have to give permission for that, and they're updated weekly.
Yeah. Years ago, it used to be, you'd give the DIBELS, and, in between those points, and for us, it's 3 times a year, so you go from September until January before your next true data point. So that high level of progress monitoring is invaluable, and specific skill-based instruction.
So we're not, I mean, I think the point and the hope is that we're not ever surprised by our benchmarks, you know what I mean? We're kind of know what to expect before we get the data formally. And so we actually did for the first time a MAP screening assessment because we have a MAP goal in third grade. And we wanted to make sure that we were checking that MAP goal. So you typically don't give MAP multiple times a year, you give it during windows. But we had a goal to hit those numbers I was sharing with you by the middle of the year. And we said, how are we going to check that? And so we actually gave them a screening assessment, which was a shorter MAP assessment, which gave us a RIT score, which helped us kind of understand where kids were falling. So,
Thank you.
It's a lot.
That is data heavy. Yes.
That was day-to-day.
Yeah.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
No,
There's more?
Yeah, I will start by saying, really thank you very much for coming here tonight. I know this is a lot. I know that we are just hitting the tip of the iceberg, and so the amount of data that you guys process is impressive and really very, very, incredible. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for breaking it down for us, in this way as well. It's important for us to see this as well as hear the goals, for moving forward I feel very comfortable and confident that you all have a good handle on all of the areas in which you want to improve and a plan to get there. So that's really, having those measurable goals is certainly is making me feel more comfortable about kind of where we are and things like that. And it's great to see the improvement that's occurring, especially coming out of COVID. this is my third year now seeing this information, so I do, I'm seeing the improvement, year over year, which is also a relief, frankly. So thank you for that. Please thank your teachers as well, and your staff, and everybody there. That we really appreciate all of the work that's being done, and I know that there is a lot of data that they are having to analyze, and probably not always the happiest about focusing on this level of detail in the data, but it really does provide a level of understanding for us, and it shows.
So what I will say is that, the teams are working really hard in their respective buildings, and Sarah with the principals and instructional coaches. When we come back from the break, we're going to show you what we believe might be a little wrench in the system, which is the shift to online assessments. So, we don't have time, because it would take time, but we want to show the committee we have concerns with the state's shift. We chose to move so we would have a year of exposure. But we're really concerned that it will have a detrimental impact on our scores just based on the system and our kids' first time exposure to navigating it. Grades.
You're talking about for the PSSA? Well, this is your job. You're going to make it great, right?
Oh, it's gonna be,
Oh,
we're
it'll
not
work.
worried about that.
I don't know if it's best for kids. And so,
No, it's more about the experience.
we have no doubt we can deploy it, for our third, fourth, and fifth graders. It's less intuitive than our other digital platforms, and so we just want the committee to see it and parents to see it.
I know schools that have had like connectivity kind of issues. Not to scare you.
I will say,
No,
I don't want to speak
yeah.
for Jim, but the tech team and I specifically have been working very closely to build the environment, the ecosystem for this to occur.
Okay.
And so we feel very confident that we will have a nice setup for it. So like Dr. Brand said, we're not concerned about deploying.
We've got a good test run coming with Keystones in the high school. That's
Yep.
only about 80 kids. We successfully did PSATs earlier in the year. So I think from an infrastructure standpoint, we're okay. It's always not what you know, what you don't know. It's not knowing what you don't know. And what we don't know is what's going to happen on those days when thousands of kids across the state are doing this, right? So,
Yeah, so, we just want to give the committee the benefit of exposure, as well as any parent who wants to see it, because I suspect a third grader, we were trying to use the tools in the system ourselves.
Like the highlighting
Correct.
and
Yes.
navigating, that's what you're
Yes.
talking about.
Well, just even following the directions.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it's like, you gotta scroll down, click this button, right arrow, drag it up, I'm thinking. Well, we're gonna
what we're
test
doing.
all of you. Next time.
Great.
And then we're gonna put
So
our
next year,
data.
that will be an
That's
announcement.
right, that's gonna be our data presentation.
It's going to be, are we smart
I'm
enough?
not trying to count next year's data meeting, but, well, I mean, we're,
Art's gonna bring back that slide.
Just keep showing that in between them.
Back in 20 years.
Just keep that up there while we're doing it.
Really do
Fade
appreciate
blue
it.
enough, so much different colors.
Trina, there's 35% of our kids. Is there anything else? Public/board members?
Yeah, so for what it's worth, I think this is the most important meeting that we run all year.
Yeah.
And this is why we exist.
Yeah.
So don't get roochie, that's a Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah.
Don't get roochie because you're here late. I appreciate you putting in the long hours today.
Yeah.
But this is why we exist. And 4 of us attended the National Honor Society inductions last night. 55 inductees. That's why we do what we do. This is why we exist. So, keep pushing. Keep pushing.
Yeah.
Push the rigor.
I can say this is my 7th year here.
The first year, I think I fell asleep, but it's okay. I got better, I got better. I want to say that I feel like this is the most cohesive and the most dedicated that I've ever seen, all of this, and thank you. It makes a difference.
So how long before the middle school 4, 5 in Hereford get blue ribbon? No, just kidding.
I can put back up the blue slide.
That is blue.
It is
Yeah, it's blue.
Kidding.
High school score, I think anybody's had that.
Sure. That was awesome.
Ever.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All right, thank you. I'll put any questions, anybody? Thank you again. I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Oh my gosh, I didn't start. I think